The sound of gunshots cracked through the air as Hope Newman ducked behind an overturned wagon, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Dust billowed around her, stinging her eyes as she clutched the leather satchel containing all the money her family had saved over the past 5 years. The year was 1876, and Tonopah, Nevada was supposed to be their fresh start, not the place where she'd be robbed by outlaws on her first day in town. "Hand over the bag, miss, and nobody gets hurt," a gruff voice called out from somewhere beyond her limited vision. Hope's fingers trembled as she clutched the bag tighter. Inside was everything: the down payment for their new home, seed money for her father's store, even the small inheritance from her late mother. Giving it up meant giving up their future. A shadow fell over her, and Hope looked up into the steely eyes of a stranger. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a worn leather vest and a revolver holstered at his hip, he didn't look like the outlaws who'd ambushed the stagecoach. His face was weathered by the sun, but his eyes held a steadiness that made her pause. "Stay down," he ordered quietly, his voice low and commanding. "I'll handle this." Before Hope could respond, the man stepped out from behind the wagon, his stance confident as he faced the outlaws who'd scattered themselves along the dusty road. "Jennings," he called out, his voice carrying across the open space. "You boys picked the wrong stage to rob today." A man in a dirty black hat emerged from behind a boulder. "Well, if it ain't Ranger Prescott, thought you were up in Carson City." Hope's protector, Ranger Prescott, apparently shifted his weight slightly. "Changed my plans. Now you boys have a choice. Ride away now, or I start putting holes in you." The standoff stretched for what seemed like eternity, tension thick in the air. Hope could barely breathe, her knuckles white around the satchel's handle. Then, with a curse, the outlaw named Jennings whistled to his men. "This ain't over, Ranger." "It is for today," the Ranger replied evenly, not moving until the sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance. Only then did he turn back to Hope, extending a hand to help her up. "Miss, are you hurt?" Hope shook her head, accepting his assistance as she rose to her feet. "No, just shaken." "Thank you, Mr. Ranger Reid Prescott, Madam, Nevada Territory Rangers." He touched the brim of his hat. "And you are, Hope Newman. My family and I were just arriving in Tonopah when those men attacked the stage." She brushed the dust from her skirts, suddenly aware of how disheveled she must look. "I don't know what we would have done if they'd taken this." She lifted the satchel slightly. Reed's eyes followed the movement, then returned to her face. "Well, Miss Newman, welcome to Tonopah." Not our usual greeting, I assure you. Despite everything, Hope found herself smiling. "I should certainly hope not." Reed escorted Hope to the small hotel where her father and younger brother were already waiting, frantic with worry. Thomas Newman rushed forward as they entered, pulling his daughter into a tight embrace before turning to thank Reed profusely. "Ranger Prescott, how can we ever repay you? You've saved not just my daughter but our entire future in this town." Reed shook his head. "No need for that, sir. Just doing my job." "At least stay for dinner," Hope suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. Something about the Ranger's quiet strength and steady gaze made her want to know more about him. Reed hesitated, then nodded. "I'd be honored, Miss Newman." That first dinner was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, as the Newmans settled into Tonopah, Reed became a frequent visitor. He helped Thomas set up his general store, showed Hope's 16-year-old brother Matthew how to ride Western style, and often found reasons to escort Hope around town. "The silver mines have brought all types to Tonopah," Reed explained one afternoon as they walked past the bustling saloon. "Good folks looking for honest work, but plenty of trouble too." Hope observed the mix of miners, cowboys, and townspeople moving through the dusty streets. "It's so different from Philadelphia. Do you miss it?" Reed asked, studying her expression. Hope considered the question. "I miss certain things. The libraries, the concerts. But after Mother died, Father couldn't bear to stay, and I understand why everything there reminded him of her. And now we're building something new." Hope smiled up at him. I think I'll come to love Tonopah given time. Reid's gaze lingered on her face a moment too long. I believe you will, Miss Newman. Summer turned to fall, and Hope found herself looking forward to Reid's visits more than anything else. He wasn't like the polished gentleman who'd courted her back east. Reid spoke plainly, moved with purpose, and beneath his sometimes stern exterior was a kind heart and quick wit that surfaced more often the better she knew him. One crisp October evening, Reid arrived at the Newman home with news. I've been assigned to track Jennings and his gang, he announced over dinner. They've been terrorizing settlements all through the territory. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Hope felt her stomach drop. For how long? Hard to say. Could be weeks, might be months. His eyes met hers across the table. I'll be back as soon as I can. Later, as Reid prepared to leave, Hope followed him onto the porch. Will you write? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Reid turned to her, moonlight casting shadows across his features. Would you like me to? Yes, Hope answered without hesitation. Very much. Something shifted in his expression. Then I will, and Hope. He reached out, his calloused fingers lightly brushing hers. I'll come back to Tonopah, you have my word. True to his promise, Reid wrote. His letters arrived sporadically, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes several at once carried by fellow rangers or traveling merchants. His handwriting was precise but unpracticed, as though writing letters wasn't something he did often. He told her of the vast open country, the small settlements he passed through, the progress tracking Jennings. Hope saved every letter, reading them again and again until the paper grew soft at the folds. She wrote back just as faithfully, sending her letters to ranger stations throughout the territory, hoping they would find their way to him. As winter settled over Tonopah, bringing with it bitter cold and occasional snowfall, Hope found herself watching the horizon daily, searching for any sign of Reid's return. The holidays passed without word, and a gnawing worry began to take root in her heart. He's a ranger, Hope, her father reminded her gently one evening as she stood by the window, watching snow drift down in the fading light. It's dangerous work. You must prepare yourself for the possibility. Don't, Hope cut him off, unwilling to hear the words. He promised he would return. January gave way to February, and still no word came. Hope threw herself into helping at the store, which had become surprisingly successful as Tonopah grew. Still, each night she read Reid's letters, tracing his words with her fingertips as though she might somehow feel his presence through the paper. It was a blustery March day when the bell above the store door jingled, and Hope looked up from the ledger she was balancing to find a trail-worn man in a ranger's coat standing before her. Her heart leapt, then immediately fell. It wasn't Reid, but an older man with a gray mustache and kind eyes. Miss Newman, he asked, removing his hat. Yes, she replied, her mouth suddenly dry. Captain Franklin, Nevada Rangers. He stepped forward, reaching into his coat. I have a letter for you from Ranger Prescott. Hope's hands trembled as she took the envelope. He's alive, Captain Franklin assured her quickly. But he was wounded tracking the Jennings gang. He's been recovering at Fort Carson for the past month. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by concern. Wounded? How badly? Shot in the shoulder. Fever set in afterward. It was touch and go for a while, but he's tough. The captain smiled slightly, and determined, insisted I bring this to you personally. Hope clutched the letter to her chest. Thank you, Captain. After the ranger left, Hope closed the store early and hurried home to read Reid's letter in private. My dear Hope, I apologize for my long silence. I had hoped to deliver better news in person rather than burden you with this, but it seems my recovery is taking longer than anticipated. We tracked Jennings to a hideout in the mountains. Things didn't go as planned. I took a bullet, but we got most of the gang. Jennings himself escaped, which weighs on me heavily. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery, but it will take time. I've been relieved of duty until I'm fit to ride again. I think of you constantly. Your letters have been my comfort through long nights of pain. I understand if your feelings have changed in my absence. 5 months is a long time, and you deserve more than waiting for a man who chases outlaws for a living. But if you'll still have me, I'll return to Tonopah as soon as I'm able. Yours, Hope read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face, tears of relief that he was alive, of pain at the thought of his suffering, and of joy that he still wanted to return to her. That night, she wrote back immediately, "Dearest Reid, my feelings have not changed, except perhaps to grow stronger in your absence. Please focus on healing. Tonopah will be here when you're ready to return, and so will I." With all my heart, Hope. April arrived, bringing with it spring rains and wildflowers blooming across the Nevada landscape. Hope began to hear rumors of Reid's return to duty, though no direct word came from him. She tried not to let her hopes rise too high, but found herself watching for him nonetheless. Then came the news that changed everything. Thomas Newman returned from a business trip to Carson City with a grim expression. "Jennings has been spotted near Silver Springs," he told Hope quietly. "They say he's gathering a new gang, and he's been heard making threats against the ranger who broke up his last one." Fear gripped Hope's heart. "Reid?" "Yes, and—" Her father hesitated. "There's more." Jennings was overheard saying he knew exactly how to draw Prescott out by coming after the people he cares about in Tonopah. For the next week, Hope barely slept. Every sound in the night had her sitting upright in bed. Every stranger who entered the store set her heart racing. Her father hired a man to guard their home and store, but it did little to ease her fears. The letter, when it came, was brief and left her cold with dread. "Hope, stay alert. Jennings is coming. I'm 2 days behind him." 2 days later, as Hope was closing the store, a man she didn't recognize entered just as she was about to lock up. Something about his smile didn't reach his eyes, and Hope instinctively stepped back. "Sorry, sir, we're closed for the day." "That's all right, Miss Newman. I didn't come to shop." He closed the door behind him, locking it with a deliberate click. "I came with a message for Ranger Prescott." Hope's blood ran cold. The man before her matched the description Reid had given of Jennings in his letters, tall, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, trying to keep her voice steady as she edged toward the counter where her father kept a pistol. Jennings moved faster than she expected, grabbing her arm in a painful grip. "Don't play dumb, sweetheart. The whole territory knows Prescott's sweet on the storekeeper's daughter in Tonopah." His grip tightened. "And now you're going to help me settle a score. Let her go, Jennings." Both Hope and her captor turned toward the voice. Reid stood in the doorway that led to the store's back room, his revolver trained steadily on Jennings. "Prescott," Jennings snarled, pulling Hope in front of him like a shield. "Should have known you'd be lurking around. I said let her go." Reid's voice was deadly calm, but Hope could see the fury in his eyes. "This is between you and me." Jennings laughed, a harsh sound that made Hope's skin crawl. "That's where you're wrong. You made it about her the moment you started caring." He pressed his gun against Hope's temple. "Put your weapon down, Ranger, or she dies right now." Time seemed to slow. Hope could feel her heart pounding, could see the calculation in Reid's eyes as he weighed his options. Then, slowly, he lowered his gun. "Good boy," Jennings mocked. "Now kick it over here." Reid did as instructed, his eyes never leaving Hope's. There was something in his gaze, not defeat, but a silent message. "Be ready." "You know," Jennings continued, "I spent a lot of time thinking about how to hurt you, Prescott. Killing you seemed too easy, but taking something you love." He tightened his grip on Hope. "That's justice." "You don't know the first thing about justice," Reid replied evenly. "Just like you don't know about the 3 Rangers outside right now or the fact that your new gang already surrendered." Jennings' face contorted with rage. "You're lying." "Am I?" Reid's expression remained impassive. "Sheriff Walker has them locked up as we speak. It's over, Jennings. You're done." Hope felt Jennings' grip falter for just a split second, and in that moment, she drove her elbow back into his ribs with all her strength. As he gasped, she twisted away, dropping to the floor. Reid moved with lightning speed, tackling Jennings before he could recover. The gun went off, the bullet splintering the ceiling as the two men crashed into a display of canned goods. Hope scrambled away, watching in horror as they grappled for control. Jennings was larger, but Reid fought with the precision of a trained lawman. A punch, a dodge, then Reid slammed Jennings' gun hand against the counter edge. The weapon clattered to the floor and Hope kicked it away. With a roar of fury, Jennings headbutted Reid, sending him staggering backward. The outlaw lunged for a knife in his boot, but Reid recovered quickly, drawing a hidden derringer from his sleeve. "Don't," Reid warned, breathing hard. Jennings froze, hatred burning in his eyes. "You think this is the end? I'll escape again. And next time, there won't be a next time," Reid cut him off. "You're headed for the territorial prison, Jennings, for life." The door burst open as Sheriff Walker and two deputies rushed in, guns drawn. Hope sagged with relief as they took Jennings into custody, her legs suddenly weak beneath her. Reid was at her side in an instant, his strong arms supporting her. "Hope, are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak as the reality of what had just happened washed over her. Instead, she threw her arms around his neck, holding him tightly as she trembled. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe now." Later that evening, after Hope had been checked by the town doctor and given a mild sedative to help her sleep, Reid sat with Thomas Newman on the porch of their home. "I put her in danger," Reid said quietly, staring out at the darkened street. "Jennings came after her because of me." Thomas sighed heavily. "Perhaps, but she was in danger the moment those outlaws attacked her stage, long before you two grew close. You've protected her, protected all of us more than once. Still," Reid ran a hand through his hair, "this life I lead, it's not safe, not predictable." "Few lives are truly safe, son." Thomas studied the younger man thoughtfully. "The question is whether the joy outweighs the risk. Does hope bring you joy, Reid?" Reid looked up, his expression softening. "More than I ever thought possible. Then that's your answer." Thomas rose, clapping Reid on the shoulder. "Talk to her in the morning. She's stronger than you think." The next day dawned clear and beautiful, as if nature itself was celebrating Jennings' capture. Hope woke early, surprised to find Reid already in the kitchen, speaking quietly with her father. Both men fell silent when she entered, and Thomas excused himself with a knowing smile that made Hope curious. "How are you feeling?" Reid asked, his eyes searching her face. "Better." Hope poured herself a cup of coffee, trying to appear calmer than she felt. "Thank you for saving my life, again." Reid shook his head. "You saved yourself, that move with your elbow," he almost smiled. "Remind me never to make you angry." Hope did smile then, but it faded as she noticed the troubled look in his eyes. "What is it? What's wrong?" Reid took a deep breath. "Hope, I've been offered a promotion. Captain of the Rangers at the Carson City headquarters." "Oh." Hope set down her cup, unsure what to say. Carson City was nearly 100 miles away. "That's wonderful, congratulations." "I haven't accepted yet." Reid stepped closer. "It would mean less field work, more stability, regular hours." Hope felt her heart quicken. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of chasing outlaws across the territory." He took her hands in his. "I'm tired of writing letters when what I want is to see your face every day. I'm tired of leaving, Hope." She stared up at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "What are you saying, Reid?" "I'm saying that I love you." His voice was low and tense. "I've loved you since that first day when you insisted on feeding me dinner after I did nothing more than my job. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you." Hope felt tears filling her eyes. "Are you proposing?" Reid's smile was tender as he reached into his pocket, pulling out a simple gold band. "Not very well, it seems. Let me try again." He lowered himself to one knee. "Hope Newman, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." Reid slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion that had built between them over their months apart. When they finally parted, both breathless, Hope rested her forehead against his. "So, Carson City," Reid tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Only if you want to. Your father's store is here. Your life is here." "My life is with you," Hope replied simply. "Wherever that takes us." The wedding was planned for June, when the Nevada desert would be in full bloom. Hope threw herself into preparations, while Reid traveled to Carson City to secure housing for them and begin his new position as captain. Everything was falling into place until 3 days before the wedding, when disaster struck. A fire broke out in the livery stable near the church, and by the time it was contained, the church itself had suffered significant damage. The roof was partially collapsed, the wooden pews charred beyond repair. "It can't be fixed in time," the minister told Hope gently. "I'm so sorry, my dear, we'll have to postpone." Hope felt numb as she walked home, the news weighing heavily on her. Reid was due to arrive the next day, expecting to be married in just 72 hours. They'd already arranged for his 2-week leave, sent invitations to friends and family throughout the territory. "We could hold it at the ranch," suggested Mrs. Holbrook, the mayor's wife, when word spread about the church, or perhaps in the town square, but it wasn't the same. Hope had dreamed of standing before the altar where her parents had once renewed their vows on their 20th anniversary, her mother radiant despite her already failing health. It had been one of Hope's last happy memories of her mother, and recreating it had felt like including her in this new chapter. When Reid arrived the following day, Hope met him with the news, fighting back tears as she explained. "So we'll postpone," Reid said reasonably, pulling her into his arms. "The church will be repaired eventually. But your position you're expected back in 2 weeks. Then we'll marry in Carson City when you join me there next month." He kissed her forehead. "Hope, I don't care where or when we marry, only that we do." Yet despite his reassurances, Hope could see the disappointment he tried to hide. Reid had few family members, but his fellow Rangers men who had become like brothers to him had arranged to attend the ceremony. Most couldn't stay in Tonopah indefinitely, waiting for a postponed wedding. That night, Hope couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed and went to the window, staring up at the stars. Somewhere in the vast darkness, she imagined her mother watching over her. "What should I do?" she whispered. The answer came not from the heavens, but from a sudden memory her father, speaking of her mother. "She always said true love doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. It creates its own perfection in imperfect moments." The next morning, Hope woke with newfound determination. She gathered the women of Tonopah, Mrs. Holbrook, the seamstress Miss Winters, the boarding house owner Mrs. Garcia, and several others, and shared her plan. "It's ambitious," Mrs. Holbrook warned, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "But if anyone deserves a miracle, it's you and that ranger of yours." For the next 36 hours, the town of Tonopah transformed. Men cleared the burned debris from the church grounds while women hung lanterns and wildflower garlands from the intact portions of the stone walls. The damaged roof meant the ceremony would be open to the sky like getting married in God's own cathedral, Miss Winters said poetically. The burned pews were replaced with hay bales covered in quilts. The charred altar was rebuilt using wood donated from half a dozen different households. Everyone contributed something: time, materials, labor, food for the celebration afterward. Through it all, Hope kept Reid away from the church, insisting on one tradition at least, that he not see the venue until the ceremony. He indulged her, though his curious glances at the townspeople's secretive smiles told her he suspected something. On the morning of her wedding day, Hope woke to find a small package outside her door with a note in Reid's handwriting. "For today, I'll be waiting." Our inside was a delicate pearl hairpin that had belonged to his mother. Hope pressed it to her lips, then carefully arranged it in her upswept hair alongside the wildflowers her friends had woven into her golden curls. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant ivory silk with lace trim, ordered from San Francisco months ago. As she slipped it on, with her father waiting to escort her and her brother fidgeting in his best suit, Hope felt a strange calm descend. "Ready?" Thomas asked, offering his arm. Hope nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They walked the short distance to the church in silence. As they rounded the corner, Hope could see a crowd gathered in the churchyard. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything, making the hanging lanterns sparkle even before they were lit for evening. And there, waiting at the improvised altar, stood Reid. He was dressed in a new black suit, his ranger's badge pinned proudly to his lapel. His eyes found hers instantly, and the love in them nearly took her breath away. But as they drew closer, Hope faltered. Emotion overwhelmed her, the memory of her mother, the months of waiting, the fear during Jennings' attack, the devastation of the fire, and now this beautiful moment created by an entire town's kindness. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Reid stepped forward immediately, concern replacing his smile. "Hope," Thomas squeezed her arm gently. "She's all right, just overcome." Hope nodded, wiping at her tears. "I'm sorry, it's everything, it's perfect, even though nothing went as planned." Reid came to her then, breaking tradition without a second thought. He took her hands in his thumbs gently brushing away her tears. "You'll walk away from here as mine," he promised softly for her ears alone, "and I as yours, that's all that matters." Hope's heart swelled with love for this man who had saved her in so many ways. "I love you," she whispered, "and I love you." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Together, they walked the final steps to the altar where the minister waited with a beaming smile. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, their vows spoken beneath the open sky as the setting sun painted the clouds in shades of pink and gold. When Reid slipped the wedding band onto Hope's finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady but his voice shook with emotion. "With this ring, I thee wed." As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above the roofless church. Reid cupped Hope's face gently and kissed her, sealing their vows as their friends and family erupted in cheers. The celebration continued well into the night, with music and dancing, feasting and laughter. Hope and Reid moved through it all in a daze of happiness, accepting congratulations and well wishes from what seemed like the entire population of Tonopah. "I have something to tell you," Reid murmured as they swayed together during a slow dance. "A wedding gift of sorts." Hope looked up at him curiously. "What is it?" "I spoke with the territorial governor. There's going to be a ranger outpost established right here in Tonopah." His eyes shone with excitement. "I'll be overseeing it. We don't have to move to Carson City after all." Hope's eyes widened. "But your promotion still stands. I'll be traveling to Carson City once a month for meetings, but the rest of the time I'll be right here." He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "With you, Reid." Hope could hardly believe it. "How did you manage this?" He shrugged, a hint of pride in his smile. "Turns out catching Jennings earned me some leverage." And the governor agrees that with the town growing, Tonopah needs a stronger law enforcement presence. Hope threw her arms around his neck, kissing him soundly, heedless of the good-natured whistles from nearby guests. When they broke apart, she was laughing through fresh tears. "That's the best wedding gift I could imagine." "Well," Reid said, his voice lowering as he held her close, "perhaps the second best. The best is yet to come, Mrs. Prescott." Hope blushed at the promise in his eyes, anticipation curling through her. "I like the sound of that, Mrs. Prescott." Later, as they prepared to leave the celebration for the privacy of the honeymoon suite at Tonopah's finest hotel, Hope's father pulled her into a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered. "You found a good man, Hope, a man worthy of you." "I know, Father." Hope looked over at Reid, who was shaking hands with the Rangers who had traveled so far to witness their union. "He's everything I never knew I wanted." "Be happy, my dear." Thomas kissed her forehead. "That's all we ever wished for you." "I am, Father, I truly am." As they rode through town in a carriage decorated with ribbons and wildflowers, Reid took Hope's hand in his. "No regrets about our unusual wedding?" he asked. Hope leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she'd never known before. "None. In fact, I think it was perfect precisely because it wasn't perfect." She looked up at the stars scattered across the vast Nevada sky. Like us, Reid's arm tightened around her. Like us, he agreed softly. 5 years later, Hope stood on the porch of their ranch house on the outskirts of Tonopah, watching as Reid taught their 3-year-old son Thomas to ride a gentle pony in the yard. Their 1-year-old daughter Emma slept peacefully in the cradle beside her, her little face so like her father's it made Hope's heart swell. The Prescott Rangers outpost had grown into one of the most respected law enforcement operations in the territory. Reid's leadership had helped transform Tonopah from a rough-edged mining town into a thriving community where families could put down roots. The Newman General Store, now run by Hope's brother Matthew, had expanded to include a second location. Thomas had semi-retired, spending most of his time doting on his grandchildren and tending to the small orchard behind the Prescott home. As Hope watched her husband lift their laughing son from the pony and swing him around, she remembered that moment of tears before their wedding and Reid's quiet promise. "You'll walk away from here as mine." He had been right. She had walked away as his wife, his partner, his heart. And he had walked away as hers. Through the challenges they'd faced and the joy they'd created together, that promise had held true. Reid looked up then, catching her watching them. His smile, still as handsome as the day they met, warmed her from the inside out. He set Thomas down, whispering something in the boy's ear that sent him running toward the house. "Mama," Thomas called as he climbed the porch steps. "Papa says to tell you he loves you more than all the stars in the sky," Hope laughed, scooping up her son and settling him on her hip. "Did he now?" "And what do you think about that, young man?" Thomas wrinkled his nose. "I think it's silly. There's a lot of stars." "Yes," Hope agreed, watching as Reid approached, his eyes filled with the same love they'd held on their wedding day. "There certainly are, and your papa means every one of them." Reid joined them on the porch, pressing a kiss to Hope's lips before taking their son from her arms. "What do you say we all go for a picnic by the creek? It's too beautiful a day to waste." Hope nodded, happiness filling every corner of her being. From that frightening first day in Tonopah to this peaceful moment with her family, the journey had been unpredictable, sometimes dangerous, but always worth it. "I'll pack the basket," she said, smiling at the man who had changed her life with a simple act of courage and the promise of love. "And Reid, I love you more than all those stars too." His answering smile was everything she'd ever needed. "I know, Mrs. Prescott, I've always known."